You're in the middle of a job, okay? You're halfway through. The job started. You were supposed to be writing a series of blog posts. Let's say one blog post a week for 12 weeks. That's the job. You've priced it. You've agreed it. Maybe you've been paid a little bit for the work that you've done so far. But midway through, something happens. Client comes back to you and says they don't want a blog anymore. They want to do an ebook, or they've decided these blogs should be in video form and they require reformatting and rewriting, or a million other variations on your original project that in of themselves are problematic. You're not being fired. It's not a massively contentious situation. In fact, in lots of time it's positive. That situation is something that lots and lots of copywriters find themselves in. I'm going to call it scope drift. It's where halfway through the job changes. It gets bigger, it gets weirder, it grows in some way that you hadn't predicted, and it puts you and your financial position often on the job at risk. So today, I want to talk about how to cope with I'll just slow down. It's only a 5-minute episode, but I'm going to talk really slowly. How to cope with scope drift.
If you enjoy The Fix and want to get access to even more good stuff, join the Fix Accelerator today. Get access to special masterclasses from Nick and me, watch expert interviews with industry legends, join live copy feedback sessions every week, and get connected to our very own private copy network. Visit thefixaccelerator.com for more information.
Scope drift, not to be confused with the original form of drift, which is entirely copyrighted by Fast and Furious franchise, where it's a fast car drifting around, skidding around the corner. Have you ever drifted in a fast car?
No, I've drifted around a couple of rooms though.
I've drifted in a fast car.
Can you do it?
No, I don't know whether I can do it, but I did do it. Whether it was accidental, it was in an Audi TT when I was a younger man, and my friend who was rich through ill-gotten gains had an Audi TT, and he let me have a go on the streets of Grimsby, and I was surprised by the acceleration. Anyway, scope drift, and this all comes.
Whoa! Every part of that story just makes me feel sad.
Mate, it was a beautiful time, and he was a lovely man.
Right,
but that's a story for an in-person meeting. What was I going to say, this all comes out of the problems and challenges of being freelance, of setting up arrangements with clients where you're getting paid X to do Y, and then that changes, and the people stop paying you, and so it all encompasses this idea of all the challenges and the pain points that we face as freelancers, and it happens far too often. We see it all the time on our Discord group of people either not getting paid for the job that they've pitched, or they've said they need X and then it changes to Y. So how do you manage that? Because it's ultimately, like, cut to the end, spoilers, it's how you manage the relationships with those clients, and it's the rules and boundaries you put in place. But how do you start to put those rules and boundaries in place? What's your first port of call, Nick?
Okay, so the first point I'm going to make is that I don't think scope drift on itself is a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with the client changing their mind halfway through and saying we want an ebook, not a blog or whatever. Inherently, there's nothing wrong. In fact, it's often a positive thing. This is great copy. We want to do something more with it, something different with it. So in of itself, it's not a problem, and it's quite natural. That's what makes it so common. Okay, so that's point one. Point two is, effectively what we're talking about is a mid-job renegotiation of the deliverables, of the terms, of the payment schedule. Okay, the whole thing has to be renegotiated, and based on the based on the number of times we've received this question, Glenn, your camera's sort of following you around. I think it's trying to follow your hand as you write something. It's like watching a very poor.
That worked well on a client call the other day because they could see I was making notes, and it kind of made them feel special. I was making notes.
Special little language, yeah. So we get the question often enough that it's like, okay, it's happening all the time, and people don't like it. Copywriters don't like it, and I think the reason for that is, and I'm going to generalize, but this is based on my experience interacting with other writers and trying to help other writers out. Nobody likes negotiating to begin with. I only know one person who likes negotiating, okay? And me and him exchange messages all the time, and I try and give him bits and bobs of guidance, but he kind of gets a thrill from deal making. But most writers aren't like that, okay? So they don't want to do it the first time. So the entire negotiation at the start is kind of a tortuous process. So they definitely don't want to do it a second time mid-job. And that creates the dynamic where they feel compelled to say yes to the change in scope, but don't, in their heart of hearts, want to actually have to open up the sort of negotiation window, the financial terms window. So that what their instinct is to avoid it. And that creates more mess down the line. So the goal of this video is to kind of bring some of these things out into the open and then just give everybody a few sort of guiding points, things that you need to do when this situation arises, because I would imagine most people watching this have been in this situation. And if you haven't, it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. Okay. So go on. You had a question.
Well, I was just going to say, just to set it up, it's, as you say, the problem is when things start changing, your natural inclination is to, because the client at that point, once you're doing work, you want to get paid for that work. And therefore your natural inclination is to say yes to anything you can, because you are, the carrot is kind of already there. So it's like, if they start hitting you with a stick, you kind of take it because you're like, well, shit, I've already invested into this. So you're naturally on a thing. So you've got to try and figure out ways of bringing the leveling the playing field again in that subconscious way.
That's called sunk cost bias. Okay. The more we've put into something, the more we feel we have to see it through, regardless of the fact that the situation may change. You see this all the time with sort of political white elephants, where it's like, well, we've spent 10 billion now, and if we cancel the project, that's wasted, isn't it? So, okay, let's spend another 10 billion, even though we know it's wasted again. You know, that dynamic, you have to fight that urge. It's a very common thing. Okay, so the first thing to remember, just to make sure your initial terms that you negotiate make sense. And that involves making sense both for you and for your client. So I'll give you an example that somebody posted on Discord that I thought was poorly constructed terms, and told the writer. I don't mean by poorly constructed, it's like you're an idiot. I just thought I wouldn't do it like that, because it's going to create this situation that you're in. And those terms involved a 25% payment for the writer up front, 75% on completion. Now, just looking at the bare bones of those numbers, that is not equitable. That is skewed in favor of the client. That creates an imbalanced dynamic between you. Okay, it needs to be 50-50 minimum, I would say. So, for instance, what I do is I come up with the idea for free, i.e. before charging anything. I've already agreed terms. So I say, I'll write an idea. If you don't like it, no money has to change hands. Okay, but if you do like it, I'm going to charge you 50% of that fee up front. What that effectively does is buys that idea, if you know what I mean. That idea, that concept, that first couple of pages now belongs to you. The client doesn't belong to you.
It's a deposit. There's a deposit down on the idea. But I think that's an interesting way. I'm thinking outside of like a full sales promotion thing. With almost anything, I reckon, or at least you should be trying to lean to giving your ideas away. We say this a lot, offering the ideas and separating the idea from the execution, because then you've got that advantage that your sunk cost is only on your ideas, and we are all ideas people. We can keep doing ideas till the cows come home, and you might think you're giving away your idea. They won't be able to execute it as well. You're the one who will execute the idea better.
And just remember, if you give away, as you said, like offer up your idea to somebody and they don't pay for it, it does not belong to them. It belongs to you. That is what that payment is. They are buying the right to that creative idea, effectively. So, because I've seen this before, where, you know, not with any of my clients, but with other work we've done, sometimes little bits of bobs of work we've done on the side, when you've given a client something and they've used it and haven't paid you, or want to use it but haven't paid you, you must remind them that idea does not belong to you. It belongs to me. You have to buy it off me. You can't walk out of the shop and say, well, I came in here for a scarf. I want it. Yeah. Pay for it then. That's how it works. Okay. So just remember.
That's why they keep chasing me out of the shops in town. I've realized now.
With a different business, I mean, I reminded you last week, so there's a different business entirely. It's more of a content thing. But there's a business that we'd done some work for that had been posting stuff and was late on payment. And I made the point that at that point, you say, you need to remove all of this stuff. It does not belong to you. It belongs to me. You didn't pay for it. That's how that works. Okay. So just remember that if somebody doesn't pay for it, it's still yours. So offering it isn't the same as selling it. You're not giving it away. You're sharing it, offering it up. And sometimes I have used this. Sometimes you say, well, if you don't want it, that's fine. I'll go and offer it to somebody else. And then people say, oh, we actually do want it. It's like, well, yeah, because it belongs to me. It's my concept. So your idea is the most valuable part of what you're doing. So you want to get paid at least 50% of your fee at that stage. Now, obviously, 50% creates a much more equal dynamic. In that 25%, 75% dynamic, what that means is that in theory, and it might not happen, but there will be a risk of it, you get paid a little bit of money at the start of your job. You then have to commit all of that time and effort. And at the end, for instance, if there's a scope shift or they change the terms or the goalpost move, you are now owed 75%. You've had to commit much more time unpaid to get to the end of that job. That opens you up to being manipulated, abused, however you want to call it, if something happens down the line. So you need to make sure that your initial terms are equitable. You don't want it to be all in your favor. It's a business relationship. It has to work for everybody. Well, I would at least, use some structure that's similar to what I just said, or has clear milestones laid out. Maybe it's 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, to avoid that dynamic, because you don't want to get into a situation where it's like, I've now spent 2 months on this and I'm owed insert meaningful amount of money that relates to your career. You've allowed that situation, that dynamic to develop through the terms that you've selected, right? So you need to avoid that happening. So you need to work out, okay, what is the maximum amount of time I want to commit before I want to be paid for that time? It might be 2 or 3 weeks, say. It wants to be as short as is reasonable, okay? You don't want to be thinking, well, in 6 months, I get the next 75% of my fee. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of time for something to go wrong. So you want to make sure your terms take into account that dynamic to begin with.
I was just thinking, Nick, there is an element, you kind of touched on it, but I think it's worth just flagging. It's always going to be relative to the size and period of the job as well. Like, yes. So like if it's months, then yeah, like that's going to have a different vibe to how you might set it up if you were just doing a day's work or two days kind of thing. So you need to be aware. It's always going to be different. But I think just the idea of equitability of the thing, that's the key element there, to make sure whatever you're arranging is equal for you and the client. And then do that relative to the length of time you'll be working on that job.
Yeah, so for instance, you wouldn't, if you were only doing a day's work for somebody, and we've just actually recorded a whole course on, I guess it's really about the art of negotiation, isn't it? I mean, it's about how to earn more, but it's about how you actually work that process through. So we can talk about how you can double that day rate fee over time. You're probably not going to say, I want half up front on a day. You're probably going to trust somebody to do the day and then, but would you do 30 days without getting paid? Probably not. So there's obviously going to be a point to start what that window is. You have to think about it. One of the things I've discovered, I mean, even working with you, people will do anything to avoid some of this stuff because it's the icky side of business for a lot of people. It requires really clear communication, really disciplined conduct to get what you want. So it's easy to allow 5 days to become 10, to become 12. All of a sudden, you're owed 12 days work. It's an inequitable situation where you don't have a lot of leverage in that relationship. Okay, so you need to police these things really well. Okay, so that's job one. Make sure that your initial terms create a kind of cascading payment effect. You're always going to be a little bit out at the end because you're going to have to finish the job before you get paid, obviously. But you're trying to create a situation where you're not completely behind on the term sheet and you're not putting tons of time in before you can get any money back. Okay, that's job one. And a lot of people don't think about that. Okay. The second thing is, so when scope drift happens, if you've done that first part right, hopefully you're not massively exposed. Like, oh God, I've already written all 12 of them. I'm owed 75%, and now I'm going to have to do more work just to get my original fee. No, you don't have to do that. But you do have to go back to the client. So the main thing to recognize is that when the scope of the job changes, you need to renegotiate that job. You need to have an open conversation with them about whether it's going to cost them more, whether it's going to take up more of your time, whether or not you can do that. So if the job changes, the payment schedule needs to change. And the second point I would make, and I think this is a key thing, anytime the job changes, I think you should use that as an excuse to be issuing an invoice at some point. So what you want to do is say, how can we get square on the work that I've already done so that we reset the relationship back to zero? So if you've only been paid 25%, say, of a job that was 12 blogs, for instance, you've written those 12 blogs, now they need to change into something else. In that situation, you need to try and get the next 75% of your fee. Or maybe you say, look, maybe not all of it, but the next 50%. You need to make sure you get paid something as part of that process to get as up to date as you can, because you're trying to prevent a situation where you have to put even more time in before you can get paid. And I think that's the key thing. So it's like, if you can have it in your head that when the scope changes, I renegotiate, and when the scope changes, I get paid. I try and make sure I get paid something.
I want to ask you, Nick, and throw it on you, but just like I'll set it up with one for myself, but ways of doing that. And I think this is where the reason everybody gets icky and worried about it and anxious about these things is because we often think wrongly that by clarifying these things, it's somehow, I don't know, dirty and all of this, naughty and all that kind of stuff. I don't know why it's there. I would riff on that at another time. But it doesn't have to be like that. You can frame everything. How you frame those negotiations can be all done in a positive way. So you can say, look, we can do all of that, what you want to do. But to do that, we just need to clear this away, and then we can get started on the next thing. So there's always, don't think that it immediately has to be like guns out, like, what the freaking hell are you doing? It's great. Okay, yeah, that we can do that. Before we do that, we just need to get this cleared away, and then that will unlock me to be able to go and do even better things for you. So just think about the framing of it and how you frame these things. I think that's a lot what we covered in that course, Nick, was that it's often how you frame the thing that will have the best effect. but people so often, usually because there's a lack of equity to begin with, you're already on the back foot. So you're thrashing rather than being confident, direct, and going, oh no, it's all good. We're all going to get there. You just need to give me that first, and then we can go and do that kind of thing. So but I was going to say, is there any other ways beyond that, beyond reframing it in a positive way, being clear, being direct, that you would give as an advice point at that stage?
Not really. I think the main thing would be probably, I mean, you alluded to it slightly there. You're going to feel emotional. Okay. So golden rules there. Do not get engaged. Do not engage in a phone call, Zoom call, meeting while you're feeling emotional. You will not come out with a good result. This is true in life as in business. If you're feeling emotional, just back out. Okay. So I would always just get away from it. If I'm feeling angry, it happens. Don't reply angry. And then reply in writing when you're calm. You're a writer. You should be able to reframe the debate or the situation. So you might say something like, oh, I've just finished the 12th blog. I was about to issue my final invoice. Then I got this. It sounds like a great idea, but we do just need to make sure that the work that I've already put in is recognized. So you might then say, look, I'm not going to issue an invoice for the full final amount because we're not done working together yet. And I don't think that would be right. But what I would like to do is issue an X 50% rather than 75%. Now, just to acknowledge the work that I've done, the time that I've put in, here's all the work that I've done. You might file it with them. Say, could we do that? Because that would make life a lot easier for me. And it's going to allow me to then make that commitment to take this next stage of the job. It's perfectly fine to ask people. These are, remember, to ask, this would work really well for me and it would enable me to help you out. These are people that want to work with you. You're in the middle of a working relationship. For one of them, if they're bad people, you need to go and tell them to do one. Do you know what I mean? So we'll just park that. And you and I have both done that, where clients have come back with a renegotiation schedule that was like laughably daft. And I mean, I wrote back to them and said, I mean, I understand why you'd send us this, but I'd be an absolute madman to say yes, because there's no benefit to me on any level. So that's the end of that. Like, you have to be prepared to do that if they're bad. But let's assume
just the body painting in that was just needless. Yeah. Had nothing to do with it. It's very strange.
I'll paint my body once, but I refuse to wear a kilt.
I've already covered most of my skin, but and you've not paid me for that yet.
But these are people that have come back to you and asked for more work. I mean, they've done it in a roundabout way, and they've allowed the scope of the job to change. But they want to work with you, so you have to kind of leverage that to a certain extent, and you have to appeal to most people's innate sense that, if our roles were reversed, I'm sure you would expect to be paid. So I would try and lay it out in writing like that in a completely unemotional way. And you can't be afraid to ask. I mean, think about the alternative, because I think a lot of people are afraid to ask. The alternative is you commit more time and energy to a job with even less prospect, or even sort of fuzzier commercial terms, because, okay, do I get paid the original amount? Am I going to get paid more? Or shall I do the work and then renegotiate at the end once I've already done the work? That's not a good strategy either. So it's like, this is your job. You're going to have to do it. So I don't like doing my VAT returns. I hate it. But you still have to go and do it. So you're going to have to do some heavy lifting that maybe you're not keen on, but it's going to save you a lot of pain down the line. Is that your dog? I can hear.
Scratching. Yeah, it's just bedding down. It's just making itself more comfortable. You said VAT, and he gets very tetchy when we mention VAT.
Yeah, well, he's not that registered, is he? Our punk bloke.
He is. He's terribly that registered. Yeah, he has to every quarter. He's got these bones and like chewed up tennis balls that he thinks are receipts.
He's trying to apply for non-dom status, right? Dad jokes, stop. Yeah, so I hate to be the one that says, like, there's no easy way of doing it, and you might not like doing it, but you have to do it. All of the alternatives will result in worse outcomes. Saying yeah and doing the work and hoping that down the line you're able to get more money from them, what you're owed plus extra for the new work, it isn't going to work. The client won't like it. You'll spend the entire time stressing out. You have to sort of bite the bullet, to use a terrible cliche, and deal with it there and then.
I think there's also, and we get into the realms of like life choices and what have you here, but when this happens, when you've got a client who's reneging on something, changing stuff, doing this stuff, it's obviously a flag. Now, is it a red flag or is it an amber flag?
Yeah.
It depends. It could be an amber flag. It could be a situation where maybe they've got a relationship with their own accountant, or they've got a problem going on, or something like that, and it's genuine, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm figuring this out." But it is a flag of that isn't green. So you need to, at this point, register that. And at this point, yes, we're going to try and resolve that case for that particular payment. However, it is another reason, something we go into the course and what have you, and we've done, I do in the client course that I did as well, finding new clients and getting better clients and developing stronger relationships. You need to acknowledge that, because the positive, if you acknowledge it and do what Nick's saying there, like stand up to it, nip it in the bud, if you like. I know it's a bit cliche, but if you do that, there is a massive positive that can come, that they go, "Oh, they're not mucking about, this fella, this woman, they're doing this right. Okay, fine. I know where I can play this game, and that's fine." And then from that on, you've got a stronger relationship and they know where to come. So that amber flag might actually turn into more of a green situation where it's like, oh no, they know where it is. So that's a huge positive. However, if you don't acknowledge it and it actually becomes a red flag where it keeps happening over and over and over again, that's not the client's fault anymore. That's on you. Whatever the George Bush fool me once, fool me twice, can't fool me twice, or something like that. Whatever the ridiculous thing that he said.
Now watch this drive.
Yeah, but this is, it does at that point, unfortunately, become your problem, because you've not identified a clear red flag and you've continued with that client. Now, again, you're going to have to close that client down and stop them. The reason you would do that, the fear, I understand, would be, oh, they're not going to pay me any money, I'm not going to get paid. But you're not going to get paid anyway. They've proven to you that they're reneging on things, they're changing things. So your time would be much better spent going and trying to, instead of writing copy for someone who's not going to pay you or value you, go and find a much better client, someone who will value you and do that. Now, of course, depending on your circumstances, that feels like a harder thing. But with the advantage of distance that me and Nick have here in this kind of preaching mode, it will be better. And if you follow it logically, if you've got that red flag earlier on, if that amber flag does turn to a red flag, then it is on you. So don't waste that time. Again, the amber flag could turn green, and you might, by facing your fear now, you will have a really good long-term relationship with that client, and they'll always pay you. So a little bit mealy-mouthed thing, but hopefully you can see what the reasons to do it and to be clear about it and to nip that in the bud, get the equitability right. If there's scope drift, again, stop, start again, figure it out, push yourself to do it, because there are only positives that can come from it. The negative is that you're going to write stuff and not get paid for it. So you may as well not write stuff, not get paid for it, but spend your time, which is the most valuable thing you've got, trying to get someone who's going to actually pay you for that on the right terms.
Glenn, I just wonder, for more on that, we did do a video on dealing with problem clients. So if that red flag situation is really like, you get again and again and again, the scope always seems to change.
Yeah.
Go and check that episode out. So just recap. So make sure your terms trail the work so that you're not putting lots of time in. You're not overexposed. I've already put 6 months in and I need to get paid for this final bit. Well, you needed to get paid in a more structured way. If the scope changes, renegotiate. if you have to, if the scope changes a little bit, you don't have to be like, I need to get paid loads more money, but you might want to renegotiate. Just acknowledge that it's a renegotiation of the terms of slightly, might require more time. And when the scope changes, use that as an opportunity, like Glenn said, to start over. Try and get as up to date with your financial position so that the work you've done has been paid for, and then you can move forward together on the work that hasn't been done yet. By doing that, just that final part alone, I mean, you can turn scope drift into something that's lucrative. Okay. Well, when you change the job, I make sure I get paid. We're up to date. Bang. Now I'm not having to wait for my payment down the line, and we'll go on to the next part of the job. That's fine. I mean, I would imagine that's what, people that milk public sector contracts for billions and billions of pounds. Imagine that's how it works. You've changed your mind. Okay, just pay us for what we've done and we'll renegotiate the terms. Great. They just keep doing that. So just use it as an opportunity to make sure you've been paid for the, fairly for the work that you've done. You never want to be in a position, I'm just going to use that 25, 75% scenario again, but there's different variations on it, obviously, where you've put in loads of time to finish a job and you're owed 3/4 of the payment on completion. To me, that is just, you are just asking for trouble using terms like that. So try to avoid that if you can. But that's all that said, Glenn, I know that you've got a hotel in Luton waiting for you. So I wonder if we should wrap this up so that you can go off to visit the Eastern Bloc or whatever it is you're going off to do.
Balkans, yeah. The Sophia. Sophia. How do you say it? I am not prepared for this break.
I think it's Sophia.
I'm telling you that. Sophia, yeah. Sophia.
Right, well, maybe you could review the city of Sophia on the next episode of The Fix. I'm going to Las Vegas, so we can do a head-to-head.
Yeah, Luton Airport is I'm more interested in. Looking forward to that. But yeah, I'm driving there shortly. Once I've done my VAT return, which you reminded me that I need to complete today before my accountant slaps me about the head.
You lucky, lucky boy. Right. I hope that was
Good
useful,
stuff.
everybody. Let us know if there's more problem situations like this you want us to record episodes on. Otherwise, we will see you next time for another episode of The Fix. Thank you very much.
That's all for this episode, but if you'd like to get your copy reviewed, or you've seen some copy you want Nick and Glenn's opinion on, get in touch at feedback@thefixcopywriting.com. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and share.